We've all heard the story of how Bandit and Chili first crossed paths.
Bandit hero.
But one question still sparks endless curiosity among fans. Who could Bluey's husband be?
Hello, Bluey.
The big clue comes in the very last episode of Season 3, where we discover that, at some point in the future, Bluey has a baby. It's a quick moment tucked at the end of the episode, showing an adult Bluey stopping by to visit her parents, now much older than we're used to seeing them. We also know Bingo is still around, since Chili calls her name in the scene. But the interesting part is that Bingo never actually appears, and we don't find out if she has kids of her own or not. The real mystery is the child who shows up at the end, reenacting the same game Bluey once played long ago. The very story at the heart of that episode. So who's the father of this child? Is this really Bluey's kid? Or could it actually belong to Bingo, who may have already been at the house? Here on the channel, we've been digging into every detail, and we've pulled together some of the most talked about theories for you to consider. You know how this works. Grab your notebook and let's dive into Bluey's world to untangle the mystery of who this child belongs to, and just who Bluey's husband might be, right here on Bluey Bingoverse. Let's start with one of the most common ideas, and also one of the quickest to rule out. From the very beginning, the show makes it clear that pups usually take after their parents almost perfectly. Think about it. The terriers look just like their terrier mom. Winton's pup is basically a smaller copy of him. Snickers, Judo, and so many others follow the exact same pattern. Bluey and Bingo are no exception. Bluey has Bandit's markings, while Bingo clearly gets her fur pattern from Chili. So it's usually not hard to figure out which family a kid belongs to just by looking at them. That's why the idea that the mysterious child in Surprise is actually Bingo's doesn't really hold up, since he doesn't look like her at all. Could the child's features come from his dad instead, the same way Bluey resembles Bandit? Of course, but that only opens up a bigger question. Who would that dad even be? Who are Bingo's male friends in the show that could hint at a possible future partner? Honestly, none really stand out, since Bluey is the one we see socializing most of the time. So when it comes down to it, can you picture who might end up as Bingo's husband one day? Now here's a theory that actually feels like it could fit. Let's break it down. When we see the baby aiming at Bandit with the tennis ball launcher, his fur immediately stands out. It's blue like Bluey's, though a darker shade, but still close enough to make you wonder. That detail points to the idea that this little one could be Bluey's child, since she's also blue. So the thought here is that Bluey ended up having a child with someone whose fur tone is darker, which matches this kid's look. And who might that be? Jean-Luc, of course! You remember him, the French pup Bluey meets during that episode where they spend days together building a fort out of sticks and leaves. Even though they couldn't understand each other's language, they found ways to communicate, like drawing on rocks to plot their big plan to catch a wild boar. And yes, as always, that boar turned out to be poor Bandit. But eventually, Jean-Luc has to leave, and Bluey doesn't realize that the hug they share is both their first and their last, for now. It's a sad moment, and you can see how much it hurts her. But Chili explains that sometimes the people who pass through our lives, even briefly, leave us with memories we'll treasure forever. Then comes the twist at the end of the episode. Time skips forward, and now Bluey is a teenager sitting under the tree she planted with Jean-Luc as a child. And who shows up before the credits roll? Jean-Luc, now speaking English. That tiny reunion suggests he never forgot her, just like she never forgot him. Their connection was short, but it clearly meant a lot to both. Maybe his family eventually settled in Australia, so they weren't just visitors anymore. And if that happened, maybe that childhood bond grew into something more. Could friendship have turned into love? It's definitely not hard to imagine, which makes it pretty believable that the mysterious baby in Surprise could actually be Bluey and Jean-Luc's child. Do you think it makes sense? There's more to unwrap about this, but first, type Jean-Luc in the comments if you're enjoying this so far. And why am I so sure about this? Because of two key points. First, when people argue that Bluey's light blue mixed with Mackenzie's black fur would somehow make a dark blue pup, that doesn't hold up. Genetics don't work like mixing paint. If a golden dog and a blue dog have a pup, you don't suddenly get green. The pup takes on the dominant traits. That's why Bandit and Chili's kids turned out blue and red, not some weird blend. And when you compare Bluey's lighter blue with Jean-Luc's darker tone, it makes total sense that their pup would end up with a mix of shades of blue. In fact, side by side, that pup looks way more like Bluey's family pattern than Mackenzie's, which already makes the Mackenzie theory shaky. But here's the real difference. With Jean-Luc, we know he shows up again. At the end of camping, teenage Bluey sits under the tree they planted, and Jean-Luc appears and calls her by name. That reunion proves their bond lasts beyond childhood, unlike with Mackenzie. And come on, planting a seed together and later seeing that tree grown, right when Jean-Luc returns? If that's not a metaphor for their relationship, or maybe even their future family, I don't know what is. So yeah, compared to Mackenzie, the Jean-Luc theory just feels way more grounded. Well, in this case, literally more grounded since they actually planted something in the ground, right? This theory might sound a little too easy, right? And since we already brought him up, we just can't go by this video without talking about the most popular guess for who Bluey could end up marrying, which is Mackenzie. Mackenzie has always been one of Bluey's closest guy friends, and he's shown up in plenty of episodes. Every time he's around, you can clearly see how natural their bond is. They laugh together, they play well, and they just click in a way that makes this idea feel pretty believable. And then there's the child theory that fuels this even more. Fans point to the droopy ear, the fur markings, and the way the pup's features look like they could be a blend of Bluey and Mackenzie. It's like the kid carries little pieces of both of them. Now, sure, the darker shade of fur can be linked to Jean-Luc, since he's got that deep blue coat. But here's where the Mackenzie argument kicks in. When you mix Bluey's light blue with Mackenzie's black, it's not impossible to imagine the pup ending up with a darker blue tone. It's almost like the colors overlap and balance out, creating that shade we see. So when you think about it that way, the Mackenzie theory does make sense, especially since he's always been such an important presence in Bluey's life. You know what else makes sense? Subscribing to the channel. Let's all be a part of the Bluey family and uncover all these mysteries together. We already know that Bluey doesn't shy away from touching on deeper or even more mature themes. We've talked about this before in another video, with moments like Brandy's heartbreak over not being able to have kids, or the revelation that Bluey and Bingo are rainbow babies, a term used for children born after a miscarriage or pregnancy loss. So with that in mind, it's not a stretch at all to think that Bluey might grow up to raise her child on her own. At the end of the episode in question, we see Bluey showing up at her parents' house with her little one by her side. But here's the detail that sparks debate. There's no sign of her husband anywhere. Was he just back at home while Bluey made the trip alone? Or could it mean something heavier, like he's no longer part of their story? Theories range from the couple separating, to the dad passing away, to the possibility that he's with another child we haven't been introduced to yet. The possibilities are endless, and honestly, they can make your head spin the more you think about them. And the best part is, whatever the truth might be, fans know that Bluey would treat it with the same honesty and sensitivity it always brings. Ludo Studio has proven time and time again that they know how to handle even the toughest themes, and they're never afraid to dive into them, even in what's technically a kids' show. There's also another interpretation that some fans have been floating around. What if the pup we see in Surprise isn't meant to be taken literally at all? Maybe that little one isn't Bluey's actual child, but instead a symbolic representation of growth and change. The idea is that this moment is more of a metaphor, showing us that Bluey has been growing up right in front of our eyes throughout the entire series. Rather than introducing a future storyline, it could be a creative way of saying that her childhood adventures are wrapping up, and that we've been part of something truly special as she learned and matured. If we look at it that way, the ending becomes less about the mystery of who Bluey marries and more about what the show has meant to its audience. That final scene could be a bittersweet goodbye, a gentle way of showing that the story we've been following has come full circle. It's almost as if the creators wanted to leave us with a beautiful, lasting image, something that encapsulates the heart of Bluey while quietly signaling the end. Instead of a promise for future episodes, it might just be a graceful send-off, a thank you to the fans for growing up alongside her.